So he resigns, so this ethics report can't, the investigation stops. Maybe he doesn't go through because there is a lot of talk because of that universal hatred and mistrust of this person. And I mean, everyone despises him and they don't want to see him over any control. So he doesn't get it. He doesn't get voted through. And then the ethics report gets leaked anyway. Right. So like he can't win if they don't vote him through, and he has no job because he resigned. So I'm kind of hoping that that's the outcome.
But aren't you disturbed a little bit by people?
I've been disturbed by him for
but aren't you disturbed? That's not my question. Aren't you a little bit disturbed as we?
A few moments later.
Sonny, you have a legal note.
I do have a legal note. Thank you, Whoopi. Matt Gaetz has long denied all allegations, calling the claims, quote, invented, and saying in a statement to ABC News that this false smear following a 3-year criminal investigation should be viewed with great skepticism. That DOJ investigation was closed with no charges being brought.
Boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. So we got to talk about this House ethics report involving Matt Gaetz. Actually, we're not really going to talk about the House ethics report. We're going to talk about the mainstream liberal media reaction to it because I actually don't give a damn about this clear and obvious smear job against Matt Gaetz, okay, using a bunch of allegations that even the DOJ found to be not credible enough to bring charges against Matt Gaetz, okay? And quite honestly, the things that they're accusing Matt Gaetz of doing, I really don't care about, right? Like, I don't care if Matt Gaetz paid to get his pee-pee wet, right? That, to me, I mean, does anybody really believe that at least 80% of the men in Congress aren't doing the same thing, right? I mean, let's be real. Let's keep it all the way 100, okay? Matt Gaetz denies those allegations, but do we really believe that a vast majority of the congressmen aren't doing the same damn thing? Like, come on, right? Like, come on. This is clearly a pot calling the kettle black kind of report, okay? And that's why I really don't care. Now, the allegations that I do care about in this report, again, they're so not credible that even the DOJ said, nah, we're not going to charge Matt Gaetz for this because the people that are accusing him of what he's been accused of aren't credible people.
She is one of 2 people whose testimony has issues that veteran prosecutors feel would not pass muster with a jury. So the 17-year-old at the crux of all of this has been deemed not credible by the DOJ, by career prosecutors there. The other is a former friend of Gaetz's, Joel Greenberg. And you're going to need to listen to a thing or two about Joel. He's a former tax collector for Seminole County, Florida. You know, Gaetz is from sort of the panhandle area of Florida. He, Greenberg, pleaded guilty last year to sex trafficking of a minor and a host of other crimes as part of a cooperation deal with authorities. So this guy was on the hook criminally and then started talking about whom else he could give up to the authorities. Greenberg was first charged in 2020 with fabricating allegations and evidence to smear a political opponent. He made shit up to hurt someone who is opposed to him in politics. Then this, Greenberg's credibility would be a significant challenge for any prosecution of Gaetz, in part because of one of the crimes Greenberg admitted to, which was fabricating allegations against a school teacher who was running against him to be a tax collector. Now, we heard that earlier in the piece. Remember, I paused and I read it to you, that he was charged in 2020 with fabricating allegations and evidence to smear a political opponent. That's bad. He's got a history of doing that. Is that what he's doing to Gaetz? And then they raise it again here, saying his credibility is going to be a problem because he admitted to fabricating allegations against a school teacher who was running against him to be a tax collector. What exactly were the allegations that Greenberg fabricated? Washington Post, walk us through it. And they do. Greenberg had sent letters to the school falsely claiming that the teacher had an inappropriate sexual relationship with a student. A similar allegation to the Gaetz case. You think?
Yeah, so you see that, you heard that. Okay, basically, the alleged victims and the accusers in this case are not credible. Okay, they're not credible. Okay, which is why this report is not credible. This is why the DOJ didn't go after Matt Gaetz. Again, this is a Biden-led DOJ. Okay, the Biden-led DOJ decided, you know what, we're good. Okay, we're not going to go after Matt Gaetz, right? We're good. You also have local law enforcement and state law enforcement in Florida saying, we're not going after Matt Gaetz either, right? Because these allegations basically are not credible. Florida Attorney General Ashley Moody's office put out this statement. They say, quote, allegations of violations of state criminal law would be investigated by law enforcement in the appropriate jurisdiction, such as local police department, sheriff's office, or the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, to determine if the agencies in the relevant jurisdictions have received information from the House Ethics Committee or have initiated investigations. You would need to contact those law enforcement agencies directly. Single circuit crimes would be prosecuted by the state attorney where the crime occurred. So they're basically saying that, hey, it's unlikely that we're going to go after Matt Gaetz. Okay. And now you also have the local sheriff's office, who is responsible primarily for going after Matt Gaetz. If there was a crime committed, they're coming out and saying, we're not going after Matt Gaetz either. Quote, the initial investigation into Joel Greenberg began with the Seminole County Sheriff's Office after latent fingerprints identified through a forensic examination conducted by the SCSO Forensics Division were found on an envelope containing harassing communications sent to his then political opponent, Brian Buett. The SCSO then reviewed state laws and determined that the crime involved federal violations due to the use of the federal postal system, which would result in stronger penalties. At that point, federal law enforcement requested to take over the investigation because the case involved more serious federal charges. As a result, the SCSO ceased its involvement and federal agencies took over the continued and expanded investigation as directed out of Washington, D.C. Yeah, so they're saying that the guy that is the primary source of these accusations, Joel Greenberg, who is extremely not credible, they were initially investigating the guy, but the feds took over, right? The feds took over the case. The SCSO is committed to investigating criminal activity, but an investigation can only begin when there is a victim or direct knowledge of a crime. This requires a sworn statement or affidavit from the victim outlining the alleged crime or information that warrants further investigation. No victim in the sexual activity allegation is known to the SCSO or has come forward with allegations relating to this report. By the time federal investigators had a verbal conversation with the SCSO regarding their findings and decision not to pursue federal charges, the state statute of limitations had long expired. Since the statute of limitations for these alleged crimes has expired and no victim or sworn affidavit has been provided, we are unable to conduct an independent investigation regardless of the findings from the House of Representatives Committee on Ethics. Yeah, so basically what they're saying is that nobody has come forward with a sworn affidavit outlining these alleged crimes against Matt Gaetz, right? There's been no victims that have come forward and said, hey, Matt Gaetz did such and such and such. None. But again, people are treating this House ethics report as if it's gospel, right? As if it's true, despite the fact that, again, all the relevant law enforcement agencies who could actually go after Matt Gaetz if he committed a crime are choosing not to do so. And MSNBC is currently fuming over this.
The investigation along the way. What's to be made of those statements in this report? One side might say, well, this is different branches of the government, so they wouldn't support or necessarily share information. The other side might say they are both looking at the same individual and accusations of these specific actions that they should work together. What do you make of that?
Well, I've certainly covered many investigations going back to, say, Robert Mueller's investigation that was run, through an FBI appointment at the same time Congress was also looking at Russian interference. So there are a lot of times we've had these things happening at the same time. Secret Service investigation of them and the assassination attempt this summer. Oftentimes investigations run concurrently and can come up with very different information. But I do think there are a lot of questions for the Justice Department regarding that and also why we never saw charges. Repeatedly, repeatedly we heard that this investigation was on hold. We've started hearing about Gaetz in 2021 because they were going to let the DOJ process play out. And then, of course, they didn't bring charges. We were told by a senior DOJ official today that it's career prosecutors who made the decisions not to bring charges. That was not a decision made by Merrick Garland or anyone in a political position who might have made that decision so as not to seem that they were putting their finger on a political scale. Instead, it was made by career prosecutors. But lots of questions there as to why, with all of this evidence we have now, they didn't think that there were some charges, except they do say that they don't think that they could have brought federal sex trafficking charges. And that seems to bear out in what we're learning today, Richard.
One of the distinctions here when we look at it, Jonathan, is the 17-year-old girl in 2017. This report saying that he did have sex with that 17-year-old. The DOJ not finding the same outcomes, not the prosecutors there not taking action. Distinguished there. Jackie, 5 o'clock is in front of us for Matt Gaetz, at least. There's also, again, that the DOJ did not share information with this report, but potentially this report was shared with DOJ. And if so, or if not, what does that mean for DOJ going forward? Might they have some new data, new evidence that may bring some new action in this case?
That is a really good question. And so far from what we've learned from some of the dribs and drabs that have been leaking out about the DOJ's investigation over the course of now it's been nearly half of a decade, have indicated that the DOJ might have access to far more information than the Ethics Committee did. And at the earlier this summer, we actually reported that the Ethics Committee was upset with the Justice Department for not providing more of the evidence and information that they had obtained through their investigatory process in that case. But we do know that the New York Times had obtained one spreadsheet that showed a vast array of women and men who were involved with these payments, indicating that perhaps hundreds of witnesses participated in a grand jury investigation and grand jury proceedings about this case. It's really unclear what the DOJ is going to do, if anything, with some of the raw materials that the Ethics Committee is likely going to hand over. And now that Gaetz is no longer under consideration for Attorney General, it sort of renders any sort of Senate Ethics Committee follow-up investigation moot as a part of the confirmation process.
So I want you guys to understand, the most serious allegation against Matt Gaetz involving the trafficking, the DOJ said, nah, we're good, right? We're good. There's not enough evidence here to actually bring any charges. We don't think we can win in a court of law. And as this lady just laid out for you guys, they likely had more evidence, a lot more evidence than the House investigation, which means that whatever further evidence that the DOJ had that the House didn't have probably was evidence exonerating Matt Gaetz, right? It was probably evidence that showed that, wait, these allegations are bogus, okay? Again, potentially hundreds of witnesses for the grand jury to decide if this is, again, credible enough to warrant an indictment. And they said no, right? They said no. And they have more evidence than the House. More. Florida state law enforcement says, nah, we're good, right? We're going to pass too. Florida sheriffs, local law enforcement said, nah, we're going to pass, right? We don't really want to deal with this either, right? There's nothing here. So you have 3 separate law enforcement agencies that have basically come out and said there's nothing to this. But the media is treating this, again, as if it is gospel. Because a biased, Trump-deranged House committee report claims that, oh, well, these allegations are credible. And again, these people, they want criminal charges against Matt Gaetz. Now, these are the same people that will kick and scream and cry, no evidence, when Republicans say, okay, well, according to a GOP House investigation, Liz Cheney was witness tampering. She was breaking the law during the January 6th committee hearings. There's no evidence of that. Well, actually, hold on now. There are text messages and a whole report on it from the House. Now, again, if Kash Patel chooses to go after Liz Cheney for that, they'll say it's a political persecution. But these are the same people that are essentially begging the DOJ to go after Matt Gaetz. based off a House report that clearly does not line up with any of the findings from law enforcement, you know, the individuals that actually are responsible for handling this type of stuff. Again, it's amazing how that works. The House report against Liz Cheney, not credible, right? Not credible. Although it hasn't been investigated yet. We don't know, right, from a criminal perspective. But the House report against Matt Gaetz, though, oh, totally credible. Although it essentially, the most serious of the allegations have been debunked by law enforcement. They say there's nothing here, not enough for us to pursue any charges. This is the mainstream liberal media, guys. This is why nobody trusts the media. Just look at the difference. Look at how they cover this report versus the report against Liz Cheney. This Matt Gaetz report is really just something for them to talk about before Christmas to get them through the slow news cycle. But there's nothing there, right? None of these allegations have any credibility. There's no proof that any of this stuff actually really happened, not the way that they claimed, okay? And again, for the least serious stuff, the partying, paying for box with consenting women, right? I don't care, right? Again, if you're going to be locking people up for that, right? If that is enough to disqualify somebody for public office, then just throw basically 80% of Congress away, right? Throw most of Congress away. Throw them all away. They should all resign too. They should all resign, okay? So I'm just saying, this is a nothing burger. This is just, again, something for the media to talk about over the Christmas holiday, and that's it. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.